truth, and there is reality, and there's one truth. There's one reality. All of us are living in the reality, and if that's uncomfortable for you, you will either sit in the pain and acknowledge and validate that this is painful, this reality is, it is breaking my heart, it is not, I don't like this, I want something and I don't get to have it, and okay, and you're surrendered to the reality, or you're going to go running away. And no one wants to go running away a coward, and so they create a story as they run away that justifies why they're running away from reality. And all of those reasons, all of those stories for running away are tactics of deception.
I wonder if after the podcast, like someone had to come in with a shovel just to clean out the studio. What was that? Anyway, the truth is that Ruby Franke abused her children and admitted that in court today. The reality is she's going to prison. How much time, we don't know. A lot of it may be based upon what she says about Jodi Hildebrandt and her role in the abuse of her children. So take a look here. This is a statement made by Ruby's attorneys, who said on Friday to Scripps News Salt Lake City, they appeared to place blame on Hildebrandt, claiming that Franke is devoted mother who was taken advantage of by a person she trusted. Initially, Ms. Franke believed that Jodi Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Ms. Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous, the statement reads. Might not be that, that far-fetched. Adam Steed was on this program and described what happened to him when he was being counseled by Jodi Hildebrandt.
Jodi lured us in, treating us kind and fun, and then she came out with these radical ideas. She used the peer pressure of entire groups and all parties involved to destroy your soul, to try to convince you that crazy wrong ideas were correct. And then just suddenly, before you realized it, it was like being a fish and biting a hook. She had you in so deep that you were, you were fighting for your life to try to get away from her, and all parties, the safety of all parties involved, and there was nothing you could do but get your life destroyed.
So I think one of the questions, again, in this case involving the abuse of Ruby's children is, how much of this was Jodi, or was it a continuation of Ruby's own behavior? Let's take a look at a timeline so we get a little bit of perspective here and context. 2015, Ruby Franke launches the parenting YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, featuring her husband, Kevin, and their 6 kids. In 2020, Ruby, Kevin, and the kids move into a home in Springville, Utah. Videos of her son being forced to sleep on a beanbag and Ruby Franke refusing to bring a 6-year-old food at school draw a lot of criticism. And this is when there begins to be this public backlash about how she was parenting her children. Then in 2022, the channel, because of all this pressure, was shut down. Ruby and Jodi start working together on self-improvement program called Connections. In August, Ruby and Kevin separate. Kevin moves out of the house. In September, their oldest daughter, Shari, requests a welfare check and tells police she's concerned that her sisters and brothers are being left home alone for long periods and wanted to make sure they had enough food. Imagine that, being concerned whether or not your siblings are getting fed. 2023, Ruby and the kids then move into Jodi's home in Utah. August 30th, Hildebrandt's neighbor calls 911 when one of Ruby's children escapes from the house, the hero of this story, and has wounds and bindings. Ruby and Jodi are arrested, charged with child abuse. September 1st, Kevin alleged his eldest daughter, Shari, had broken into the family's home. November 29th, Kevin files for divorce. That's where we are. So who's to blame? And how much of this is Ruby continuing this behavior, or is it Jodi's influence, or is it Jodi making it all happen? Still with me, host of the Mormon Stories podcast, John Dehlin, and also joining us in Orlando, Florida, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey. I'm looking at this situation here, and there's a few things at work here. Dr. Janie Lacey, is it possible for a parent to not be the one mostly responsible or almost entirely responsible for the abuse of their own child when they have care, custody, and control?
Well, there's no doubt that the parents are ultimately responsible, but we can look at situations where the closest people to them who have repetitive access and download of certain messages can create a distorted reality and can create certain levels of distorted belief that are not based in healthy attachment and secure attachment in these family systems that can potentially influence how they were parenting or how she was parenting and how she related to her children, and seeing them, as we were hearing, through religious or cult-like belief systems that they were evil and treating them as such. So is it possible that there was a strong influence, especially if there was repetitive download and access to her? Absolutely. But ultimately, the parents are responsible for the well-being of their children and what has happened in this case. But in cults, 100%, we know that the influence is there, and distorted reality can influence someone's bad behavior.
John Dehlin, how would you compare how Ruby was treating her children, before she met Jodi versus after? Because there still was criticism for the way she was doing it, very openly, very publicly on YouTube.
Yeah, I think definitely Jodi Hildebrandt is known for severe measures, both to keep a husband in line and to keep children in line. But I just want to open up the assignment of responsibility to one other group. There's some core teachings of Mormon doctrine or theology, the idea that sexual sin is next to murder in severity, that evil spirits exist to penetrate our brains and to tempt us to get sexual sin, to commit sexual sin. If those two teachings didn't exist, Jodi Hildebrandt would not have been able to put her meat hooks into Adam Paul Steed and his wife, into Ruby and Kevin. It starts there. It starts with a Mormon couple going to their bishop saying, I caught my husband or my kids doing this or that, and I need help. And then the Mormon bishop says, Jodi Hildebrandt will solve your problems for you. And so that's a third, in my view, that's at least a third of the responsibility, is toxic Mormon doctrine and theology, and you could say Christian or just religious, around sexual purity and the severity of sexual sin. Then of course there's Ruby and Kevin's responsibility, and then a third at least is Jodi Hildebrandt sort of fomenting cult leader-like influence over Ruby and Kevin in a way that has wreaked havoc in not just two families, but in hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of families all along Utah.
So, Dr. Janie Lacey, what's in it potentially for someone like Jodi Hildebrandt to be inserted into someone's family, to break it apart, to allegedly abuse the children? What's the end game in all of that for her? Is there something psychologically? Could she be motivated just by money, power?
Usually in these cases, my assumption would be that there's some power and control that feeds her, especially when there's some delusional tactics that are creating people's behavior and there's a following. And I believe 100% what my co-panelist has mentioned, right? So someone's belief system and what they're being indoctrinated in, their spirituality, and we can just pick the colors of the ice cream, that's going to dictate how they see family, that's going to dictate how they see life. And if Jodi knew this, and whatever her own levels of potential relationships and trauma or beliefs or whatever has created this position where she probably was also delusional in the sense, this depending on where she was in her own toxic faith walk, But the power and control and being able to manipulate people, especially under toxic situations, is probably more common than we realize, but they don't always result in abuse situations like this case has.
John, what about Jodi Hildebrandt's own life? Like marriage, children, what's her backstory? And how did she get to where she was?
We know that Jodi, growing up, didn't fit the mold of the modern Mormon gender stereotype for a young woman. She was more masculine, more athletic. She did get married as a young Mormon woman should. Her marriage didn't last more than 2 years, as I understand it. And I think it's pretty clear that just women generally within patriarchal kind of high demand religions tend to feel disempowered and devalued. And so as Jodi Hildebrandt became a mental health professional and started developing solutions for couples and solutions, even though her own marriage had failed, fixes for marriages and solutions for parenting, even though she, as I understand it, struggled as a parent herself. This accumulation of power as a therapist that could fix some of these very severe problems facing so many Mormon families became a real source of power for her. There are questions about whether possibly Jodi and Ruby were, there was some romantic interest, at least on one side or the other. There's definite indication that Jodi Hildebrandt's never been very fond of men and almost gets a satisfaction out of kind of torturing and punishing men. And then the only other thing I'll add to what's already been said about Jodi is that in addition to money and power and possibly sex, there's good indication that she literally believed that sexual sin is next to murder in severity, because that's the doctrinal teachings of the Mormon Church that she's a member of. So if she's resorting to handcuffs or binding as a way to prevent a husband or a kid from committing a sin next to murder, there might have been some sincere religious beliefs that were informing both Ruby and Jodi.